The latest. Thank you for your love and support. Those who are sending me super thanks, I say thank you. The president of Kenya, William Ruto, is begging the Chinese president to help him gain Brics membership when Donald Trump was declared the winner of the 2024 elections. William Ruto is a type of president that is willing to please the West no matter what, even if the citizens have to go hungry for the West to be happy, he will do that. But why all of a sudden? These people have manipulated us, dictated to us for several centuries. Look at the kind of sanctions that we get. The dollar system, making sure that they use their system that they've created, the World Bank, IMF, to cripple the African economy day in, day out. Yet our leaders can just stand up to themselves and say no. And now that we have another voice, which is the Brics, that is giving us the liberty to have our freedom. This means that every African leader who truly have the intention of African at heart have to join. These people are even making things easier so that even wherever you are, you can trade in your own currency so that you wouldn't have to depend on dollar for any sanctions. This is so amazing. This is what we want. An organization that we can have our liberty to do whatsoever that we want. And this is the Brics for us. So why is Africa not going to join fully? We have to go there as a unit, not individual nations, with one voice. That way Africa will be stronger. So that's the latest around the world in Africa and in Kenya.
From Kenya's historically Western-aligned foreign policy, President William Ruto has made an unexpected and ambitious request for Kenya to join BRICS, the bloc initially formed by Brazil, Russia, India, and China in 2006, with South Africa joining in 2010. Ruto's recent moves represent a calculated shift towards the global South and signal Kenya's readiness to join other African countries that are increasingly seeking an alternative to Western economic and political influence. This pivot comes after Ruto declined an invitation to the 2023 BRICS Summit in South Africa, a decision that drew heavy criticism from Kenyan media, which accused him of making an emotional and irrational choice by aligning too closely with Western interests. However, in a recent strategic meeting with Chinese official Li Xi, Ruto aimed to strengthen Kenya's relationship with China, reaffirm Kenya's adherence to the One China policy, and secure China's support for its BRICS membership bid. This effort aligns with a broader African trend of reconfiguring alliances, especially as BRICS grows into an influential economic coalition that includes new African members like Egypt and Ethiopia and represents about 28% of the global economy. Kenya's newfound interest in BRICS is part of a broader geopolitical reorientation among African nations toward the global South, driven by BRICS Plus's growing influence. For many African countries, BRICS represents an opportunity to reduce dependency on Western-led financial systems and counter what they view as exploitative economic practices. In contrast to the US-led Western order, BRICS advocates for multipolarity, economic self-determination, and fairer global trade practices. This appeal has catalyzed a wave of applications from Africa, with about 15 African countries expected to be considered for membership at the next BRICS Summit. For African nations, the primary attraction lies in BRICS Plus's commitment to principles of equality, respect for sovereignty, and multilateral cooperation. Africa is looking for leadership that supports sustainable development, and the BRICS framework aligns with many African leaders' visions of fairer global collaboration. While African countries have long sought to diversify their partnerships, their frustration with restrictive conditions imposed by Western financial institutions has reached a peak. As a result, African leaders are increasingly consolidating their interests around BRICS, seeing in it the potential for more balanced partnerships and economic growth. Kenya and other African states have voiced growing frustration with the conditionalities imposed by Western institutions like the IMF and World Bank. These conditions often demand austerity measures that undermine local development agendas and social programs, leading many to seek more flexible financing options. The new development bank, NDB, established by BRICS in 2015, offers African countries loans and grants without the stringent requirements typical of Western lenders, allowing African governments greater control over domestic policy. BRICS has set ambitious plans to reduce dependence on the US dollar, a policy that aligns with African countries' interests in achieving financial autonomy. Through initiatives to establish alternative financial payment systems, BRICS aims to reshape global trade and monetary policies, enabling members to trade in local currencies or through other mechanisms that bypass dollar dependency. For African economies, this would mean increased resilience against currency fluctuations tied to dollar-based trade, supporting a more stable and independent economic environment. The NDB has pledged to create a more inclusive financing model for member states, facilitating investments in infrastructure, energy, and digital innovation that directly support sustainable development. For Kenya, BRICS membership could unlock funding for large-scale infrastructure projects and reduce its dependency on Western aid. The NDB's flexibility appeals to African leaders who want to address specific national priorities without the strings attached to Western financial aid. Initiatives like the African Continental Free Trade Area, AFCFTA, align with BRICS's goals to foster regional trade and economic integration. China, in particular, has supported African infrastructure projects under its Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, which includes substantial investments across Africa to improve trade routes, build ports, and modernize transport systems. By joining BRICS, Kenya could leverage partnerships with China and other BRICS members to further the AFCFTA's vision of a single African market, ultimately boosting intra-African trade and self-sufficiency. Security and stability are critical for Africa's development, yet the region has struggled with fragmented security policies and external interference. The U.S. African Command, AFRICOM, tasked with U.S. military operations in Africa, has faced criticism for its inability to foster regional stability despite a substantial budget. As geopolitical dynamics shift, African states are increasingly looking to BRICS, plus as a potential partner for addressing their peace and security needs. Russia, a BRICS member, has supported African countries in resisting Western military influence, particularly in French-speaking regions like Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. This trend has encouraged African countries to envision BRICS as a reliable partner for security and governance, especially in areas still grappling with conflict, such as the Horn of Africa. The 15th BRICS Summit Declaration, adopted in South Africa, reaffirmed BRICS's dedication to supporting African peace initiatives and inclusive multilateralism. The document underscored the central role of the United Nations in maintaining global stability and condemned coercive measures not aligned with international law. This commitment to multilateralism resonates with African countries seeking alternatives to the dominant Western influence on global security policies. African leaders recognize that peace and security are essential for sustainable development. With the rising need for effective conflict resolution mechanisms, BRICS offers a multilateral approach to address security challenges across Africa. This approach is particularly relevant for Kenya, which faces security challenges from regional instability, including terrorism and border conflicts. The alignment with BRICS provides African countries like Kenya with an alternative to relying solely on Western military support, particularly when such support has not yielded lasting stability. Russia's increasing presence in Africa, particularly in providing support for governments in conflict zones, has strengthened its reputation as a security partner. Russian assistance in expelling Western influence from Francophone countries in West Africa has further boosted Africa's confidence in BRICS as a viable partner in peacekeeping. The African Union's recent engagements with BRICS on peace initiatives signal a collective effort to build a security framework outside the Western sphere of influence. China's role within BRICS, especially through the Belt and Road Initiative, has had a transformative impact on African economies. Chinese investments across Africa have provided the infrastructure critical for regional trade, making China an indispensable partner for Kenya and other African nations. Kenya's growing ties with China through BRICS would likely boost investment in infrastructure projects that support regional integration under the AFCFTA. Through BRICS, Kenya stands to gain enhanced access to Chinese markets, which are central to Africa's export economy. The BRICS platform not only opens doors to intra-bloc trade, but also positions Kenya to capitalize on China's robust trade networks in Asia and the Middle East. This shift aligns with Kenya's economic strategy of diversifying its trade partners and reducing dependency on Western markets. Kenya's request to join Brics reflects a broader African movement toward redefining alliances in the 21st century. Driven by frustration with Western dominance, restrictive financing, and a desire for sovereignty, African countries are increasingly looking to Brics as a model for achieving financial autonomy, sustainable development, and regional stability. For Kenya, Brics membership could unlock access to flexible financing, boost trade, and enhance security cooperation, all vital components of Ruto's economic and foreign policy agenda. As Brics grows into a more inclusive organization, the bloc's vision of a multipolar world where Global South countries play a defining role has resonated across Africa. Brics Plus represents an opportunity for African nations to reshape their economic future on their terms,